the focus of this particular resource is on the role of leadership in nurturing a faith-sharing culture. So there are three angles or aspects to that. It's about culture. And we know that culture influences everything that we do in our churches. One way of defining culture is the way we do things around here. And we also know that leaders are cultural architects, or cultural animators, if you prefer. That in our leadership, we get the opportunity to influence culture, to shape, nurture culture, to be a little bit more kingdom-like. But what we also know is that when it comes to culture shaping, it isn't easy. I really like this quote from Sam Chand. Changing a culture requires clear thinking, concerted effort, enormous courage, and creative consistency. And I certainly find that to be true. It is a real challenge to shape culture well, but we have the opportunity to do that. So the book's about culture and how leaders shape culture. Secondly, we've taken a particular approach to this, which is something called 1 degree shifts. I wonder if any of you remember back to the Olympic Games that were in London, and the British cycling team who did amazingly well during that time. Well, part of that was because of 1 degree shifts. It's something called high performance sort of coaching. And David Brailsford, who was the manager of that team, was absolutely rigorous about finding small changes that could make a big difference over time. And that's the approach that we're taking in this resource. It's about 1 degree shifts. For those of you who know the work of London Institute for Contemporary Christianity, they've taken this theme and have applied it in very helpful ways. And we're going to do the same. I wondered if I can tell a story that illustrates this. Some years ago, when I was a youngster, our family was into sailing, and we were planning to sail from the east coast of England across to Holland. And strangely, it might seem to those who don't know about sailing, you do that overnight because it's actually the safest time to do it. So we left late in the afternoon, and we're due to arrive sort of midday the next day. As we're approaching Holland in the morning, we're looking for particular things on the coast, which tells us that we're approaching the right part of the coast that we're aiming for. And as we get towards the coast, we're looking for these things and can't see them. So we're a bit bemused because we think we're where we're meant to be, and we can't see the things we're meant to see to tell us that we are where we're meant to be. And we get a little bit closer and still can't see any of these things. And at that point, the navigator on the boat went back to the charts and then came up and had to admit, rather embarrassed, that they'd made a mistake. They'd made a miscalculation of 1 degree. And over time and distance, 1 degree meant that we were not actually approaching the coast of Holland, we were approaching the coast of Belgium, which is why we couldn't see anything that we knew we were meant to be seeing. 1 degree over time and distance can take you to a different place. And that's really the concept at the heart of the book, 1 degree shifts. And then what we've done is we have thought about these 1 degree shifts, and we've tried to work out what would be some 1 degree shifts that we could apply in the same way that the British racing team, the cycling team, applied them into church life. And we've come up with 7 core shifts. And here are the 7 core shifts. Right at the heart, we know that our own engagement with God is key to our faith sharing. So that's the first core shift. How do we help people to engage with God? The second core shift is around something many of you will be familiar with from Thy Kingdom Come, pray for 5. And this is an embedded practice that we can get into the life of the church. Each of these 7 things are embedded practices that we can get into the life of the church, because we know you change culture through embedding practices. So the first would be engage with God, helping people to engage with God. Second is praying for 5 people who we know who don't yet know the life-transforming love of Jesus in their own lives. Thirdly, to refocus the way we do our intercessions in corporate gatherings, so that actually the praying for those who are not yet disciples of Jesus is a natural part of our intercessory prayer. Just in the same way as we often pray for people who, for example, are not well, so too let's find creative and good ways to be praying on an ongoing basis for those who don't yet know Christ. The fourth embedded practice is what we're calling practicing faith conversations. The reality is we are much more likely to talk to people in our scattered lives about our faith if we're talking to people in our gathered life as a church about our faith. So let's make sure we're practicing faith conversations. The fifth embedded practice is what we're calling telling faith stories. All of us are encouraged when we hear stories of people coming to faith. So let's make sure we're regularly telling those stories. Last summer, during the summer period, we had a series where every Sunday we invited somebody to be interviewed about their own journey to faith. And we didn't choose, if I can put it this way, the usual suspects. We just chose a wide range of people from the congregation. It was such an encouraging thing every Sunday to hear a new story about somebody who had come to faith in Christ. Sixth embedded practice is what we're calling resource faith sharing. How are we actually resourcing this in the life of our congregations? And linked to that, are we budgeting for evangelism in our congregations as well? So these are 7 practices. And for each of them in the resource, we give a quick summary of what it is. We give you an explanation. We give you some tips on how to embed this practice, and then a whole bunch of resources that are linked to it, so that hopefully we can make these 1-degree shifts in the life of the church. If you're sitting there and thinking, hold on a minute, James, that's 7 things. We haven't got time to do 7 things. You're quite right. Of course you haven't. The idea is that you don't do all 7. You just choose 1 or maybe 2. And then over time, measured in months, not in days and weeks, embed that practice into the life of the church, and a 1-degree shift will occur. And you'll end up changing culture and placing faith sharing a little bit more central to the life of the church.
Okay, thank you, James. I'm really glad you said that bit about we don't have to do them all, because that there may be 1 degree, but actually 7 degrees feels like quite a lot.
Yeah.
So actually picking the one that feels relevant to you sounds very good.